it's show and tell. What you're looking at here, encased in this acrylic cube, is a sample of yeast that dates back over 100 years. I got as a present when I visited Lamont, which is a yeast production facility here in Montreal. Totally amazing. I wasn't prepared to see such a scale. Fermentation tanks that are the size of buildings, and they produce yeast for the baking industry. Yeast is fascinating. It is one of the oldest microbes known. The ancient Sumerians, 5,000 years ago, were already brewing beer with yeast. Of course, it was all accidental. Yeast is everywhere. These little cells are floating around in the air. They're in the soil. They're in our food. They're everywhere. And it just turned out that when grains were left in a moist environment, they began to ferment, because that's what yeast does. Yeast produces enzymes that will convert sugars into carbon dioxide and alcohol. Now, of course, the carbon dioxide can also be used to raise bread, and the ancient Egyptians knew about that. That goes back, probably 5,000 years. And of course, by the time that the Exodus took place, the story in the Bible, where the Israelites had to leave Egypt with their unleavened bread, obviously yeast was already well known because they knew about leavening. Well, the first time that anyone actually saw yeast cells was Anthony Leeuwenhoek, the Dutch scientist who basically invented the microscope, although the microscope didn't look anything like our microscopes today. He didn't know what these cavorting things were. He didn't recognize that they were living things. It was Louis Pasteur who unraveled the mysteries of yeast and proved that yeast was an organism that could multiply and would produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. Today, of course, in those giant fermentation tanks, yeast is allowed to multiply, and then the moisture is removed and you get dry yeast, which is what you're looking at here. And this, of course, is what the baking industry uses around the world. And bread, of course, is a staple. So is beer, and so is wine. And all of those are due to that little organism, and under moist conditions, it multiplies, and it does a fantastic job in converting sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. So I really appreciate this little gift here of dry yeast that is over 100 years old, which is when the company started here in Montreal, and is still growing, and the technology is amazing. You walk through there, you see these giant fermentation tanks, and you see robots packing the yeast and doing all kinds of jobs, of course, in a totally immaculate environment, because you have to make sure that no strange organisms get into the fermentation tanks. So I appreciate this little gift of yeast, and now I have it to show and tell. And that's it for today with our show and tell.